Now that we have the plugin actually working inside of our page, I'd like to actually go into more detail on how it works and see how we could really customize it to fit what I'm looking for. And that's basically, I want pictures of St. Petersburg populating over there instead of these cute little dogs. So I'm going to go back to the place where I found the plugin and kind of look through the documentation over here. So the plugin overview, if you kind of look through that, it's more of what we know anyway. I mean, we quickly did that. We know that anytime we get a plugin, we kind of attach the actual JavaScript and the CSS to our HTML, and I don't know, usually just change the selector, and it seems to always work for us. Plugin options. Okay, this is the important part. So the plugin options, well, let's actually consider how this plugin works. There's two sections to it. There's this part over here, which is the plugin options, and everything in here dictates exactly what we're going to receive back. I mean, this limit says 4. I mean, I kind of saw that right off the bat. The limit was 14. I had 14 thumbnails. I just changed it to 4, and Viola, I got 4 thumbnails. This QString, I've worked with Flickr before, so I know that this number over here represents someone's Flickr account. So okay, so that's targeting these people. Anything that's in their Flickr page is happening there. But that's not what I want, because actually what I want is pictures, like keyword pictures. Like, I don't care whose account they're in. I just kind of want them like anything of St. Petersburg. So I'm going to need to figure out how to do that. And item template, I guess the second part of this is what it's going to add to the photo. So these things in here, this is actually just going from my experience in the past using this. These are attributes that it'll actually pull in, because when jQuery gives you not jQuery, when Flickr gives you photos, it also gives you metadata. Like when you take a picture with your camera, you have all like when you took it, all that stuff. I mean, the f-stop. There's a ton of stuff, and this also seems to be pulling in some information as well. I mean, obviously href, this thing's pulling in the location, the URL of it, the source, where it is over there, and whatever tag it has on there. But from what I saw before in the documentation, at this part over here, we could add some customization or add classes and all sorts of stuff to our to the results that we get. But I guess for now, we ought to focus on deriving the results we have. So let's go, and if you scroll to the section that says plugin options, here's where it's going to give you some insight on what you have. So first off, I guess these are all, this sort of looks like what we have in our example, but not quite. So let's see what they're talking about here. It says Flickr base. This is unlikely to be needed. It's used to set up the URL. The jQuery AJAX call will need to be made. Whatever. I don't even know what they're talking about, so that's fine. Feed API. There are a number of feeds. The default is public. Okay, this is actually an important part of it. The feeds are what they're basically PHP files that spit out certain categories of stuff, and we look at the available feeds. We have public photos and videos, friends, public favorites from a user, group discussions, whatever. Now, just for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to discuss or look into the public photos and videos. But essentially, the information I'm going to give you on this is the same for all of these. Public photos and videos, what that is if you've ever used Flickr, you could when you create an account and upload photos, you could either set them to public or private. Now, when you set them to public, they go into this public pool. So that means that there's a PHP file that spits out all the photos that are public, right? So actually, let's click on it, and I'll show you exactly what it is. It's this URL here that's the actual PHP file doing this. But you're saying, hey, but this is not a PHP file. This is a .gne file. What is that? Well, where do you think we're going to find the answer to that? Yeah, that's right. I'm going to Google file extension GNE, and then one of the first results I get is right here, and it just tells me that essentially the GNE file type is primarily associated with Flickr. Flickr renames its PHP files to .gne, and it also tells you because Flickr was originally by game never ending, and they had a set of GNE tools, whatever that means. Okay, I mean, just gives us some insight. It's really the usual stuff. But when we look here, I want to actually draw a parallel to this public feed and the Wikipedia one we had. If I copy and paste this here, here's everything it's spitting out, right? That Flickr's spitting out via this page. Now, when we add parameters to it, we could say exactly what we want. So there's obviously some default parameters set that's given us this. Now, this feed, this URL over here, is pretty much the same thing that we have with that Wikipedia feed that we used. Because look, here we're looking at the Wikipedia API. Now, mind you, this thing is .php, which is what the other one could be as well, the .gne. I'm curious, actually, now that I'm here, I wonder if we change this file extension to PHP if it'd still work. Okay, no, it didn't. I don't know. I was just thinking maybe they set it up to accept both extensions, but they didn't. All right, but Wikipedia, it does the same thing. So really, what this plugin is doing, it's likely doing, is see this Wikipedia thing we used before. We put this crazy URL in here, but I bet you this Flickr feed, all this thing is doing is basically generating this thing for us, but in a more user-friendly way. So ultimately, the author, the guy who posted this for the Wikipedia thing, could likely, with just a little more effort, transform this code into a function as well that could be like easily implemented this way. But he didn't. It's fine. It worked for us anyway. But just as the effort when we use this is that we really need to know specifically how to construct the query. The advantage of using something that was pre-built for us here is that it's obviously this is like a more human-friendly way of setting the different parameters of what we want back. So let's actually figure out what our options are for parameters.